Welcome to the Black and White Podcast. I am. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and one of your hosts of the Black and White Podcast. My co-host, a good friend. Let's bring him to the stage, Tim Pop.
Ferdinand Thomas. Glad to be here with you. Man, I'll tell you, when you start to want to do this thing like more often than once a week, that's something. That means something.
So I've got to apologize to everybody out there who's listening in. Thank y'all for tuning in. It says that it's episode 5. We did episode 5 already. It's episode 6. We're going to be navigating communication today. So Tim, what are some of the things that you've been noticing about communication challenges through cultural diversity?
Yeah, well, and I guess the best thing to do is refer to examples of what it was like for us to start our adventure that we've had here and leading up to this point to have the Black and White Podcast. But the conversations, the hundreds of conversations we had through time is a good example of what kind of things you have to look out for. And I thought it was important because we were talking about, go out and get yourself some, mix it up, get some different colors into your life. If you don't have somebody that's, that's brown, go out and find yourself a Mexican friend, find somebody that you can connect with, because we're all people and there's no reason that we can't relate to one another. But, there are some challenges if you come from different backgrounds, if you have different historical backgrounds, whether it be relationships, family, the way your families work, the way you raise your kids, religion, differences in religion. And the fact is, you're not going to change somebody. You may think that your way of life is the best because you've been living it your whole life and everything is working well that way. And that's fine. It's all about sharing those kinds of ideas, because it's something that gives us more diversity ways for us to live our lives. But you can run into some real headwinds where, you find yourself trying to preach your way of living and saying this is the best way to live. So why don't you understand that? Why can't you understand that this is, I want you to agree with me. And people get that in their mind that I have to convince this person that my way is the best way. And it doesn't, well, first of all, it doesn't work. You're not gonna get anywhere if you have that kind of an attitude, and you're gonna come off as brusque or abrasive, and it's not gonna build that successful communication bridge. So that it's something that I thought it was just kind of important for us to just cover a little bit for anybody that's paying attention to this as a series. The last cast that we had was like that. It was, hey, get yourself some different colors in your life, and for me it was very, very big in the Army. 2008, it was all of a sudden I was constantly with all different colors, from whether it be Hawaiian or Mexican or Black people, which now I like what Ferdinand taught me, melanated people. I like that. Where I had a much larger window, much larger exposure, because being in Northern Illinois in the suburbs, it's largely white community. I mean, you can go out. It's for sure it's blended, but I'd say probably blended less than what the national matrix is. And for Ferdinand, it's the ratio is different. So for me to understand better what it's like to live as in a different culture, I have to communicate that in a way, or ask questions in a way that's not. You tell the right up front. You say, hey, listen, I may say something that's offensive because I just don't know any better, And if there is something that's offensive, I really hope you can give me a reason why. Don't say, well, you just don't say that. Well, that's not really enough. I mean, what is it that makes it bad? It's just words, and maybe you can come to a thing at the end of it and say, you know what, that really shouldn't be very offensive. Why are we offended by that? Why are we offended by those kinds of words? So anyway, we thought it would be good to expose the communication a little bit, talk a little bit about how Ferdinand and I began things. I mean, it's been pretty much open the whole time. We've never had a difficulty, but we did take time, slow it down a little bit, work through communication. How are we communicating with each other? It's something that we did grow on, but we've always had a good connection from the very beginning.
Absolutely, and I'm very thankful for that. When you when you touch on the challenges that we often face between ethnic groups of people, that has a lot to do with belief of self, and pending what we believe about ourselves is going to not completely dictate, but it's going to heavily influence the delivery of communication. The tone, the pitch, the inflection, the language use, the syntax, the sentence structure, the delivery of that message. So before we go too far into the talks that Tim and I can do, I do want to bring something to the screen, because I want to break something down before we move further for all of our listeners out there. And again, thank y'all very much for listening to the Black and White podcast. It's episode 6. We're navigating communication through cultural diversity. I'm the guy with the books. We got Tim over here. Now check this out, y'all. We got the transmission of communication. We have the communication model here, or this is a decent look at the communication model. It's drawn in different ways, but basically what we have in the communication model is we have a source sender of a message. They're encoding a message, and as they encode that message, it has to travel through noise. I would even go as far to say that the noise is not just the tone, pitch, and inflection. The noise is also how we think, what we think about ourselves, right? And then as that message is sent to the decoder, now it has to travel through noise, while there's also the noise in that person's being that they have to overcome to get the intended meaning of this message. And then the proof of all of that is based upon the message that the decoding or the receiver sends back to the source sender, right? So this communication model helps us to understand what's happening. Tim, I already know you don't need this, but I want to make sure that everybody out there who might be, you might not know much about communication, and that's fine. This is where
one of the things I think about this particular diagram that's good. Noise is also how our brain is built. What is the model? What is our personal matrix like? We refer to it as the paradigm. I have a paradigm. This is the way I look at life. I think the way that I have thought for the last, for the most part, 50 some years. And it was something that was built from then based on what was around me. What was my family life like? What were friends up and down the street like? What was it like going to school? And to me, I built a paradigm of what life is. Well, that paradigm looks different in Ferdinand's head. So when, even though we have a lot of similar experiences, there's also some experiences that they're vastly different. So when I'm talking to him, he's using his paradigm. That's part of the noise that you have to figure out how do you bring that down? How do you bring that to a controllable level to where now that's not a factor, where we can see each other's paradigm and say, okay, now I can decode his message that he's sending to me. And then he can also say, well, normally I would say it like this, but he didn't grow up in the neighborhood. So I'm going to explain to him a little bit differently. So he'll encode it different, send it through what could be noise is now wiped out, and then I can decode it in my mind. So it's we see those we see that combination of things, and we're able to understand the message better once we break down that paradigm what we each have. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, and thank you for that. When we're talking about communication through cultural challenges, through cultural barriers, it brings me to think about the question that your friend asked last on our last episode, and then we talked a lot about what happened in the South, in Mississippi. When we talked about what happened in the places like Alabama, Texas, Florida, right? There's been a lot of challenges that have taken place between Caucasian and melanated, or whatever a person may identify as, black, colored, Negro, African American, whatever, right? But between these groups of people, there's been a lot of butting of heads, and tradition in certain families are certain ways, traditions in the families over here certain ways, and if we're not communicating, so we don't know what those traditions are, and if we overstep, depending who we're dealing with, it could be an accidental overstep that makes the communication between those two people even more challenging, right? So we need to know a little bit more about each other as much as we can, but we also need to show up with a balance of selfishness and selflessness. Many of us step into communication spaces thinking all about self the entire time, not really looking into the reality that you're communicating to someone else. So now that individual's input, how they think, their feelings, all of those things need to matter to you in that space. Because if they do, now you're going to operate differently in that communication space. You're going to get totally different results because of that. But it is because of a mentality of a balance between selfishness and selflessness. We need to have the selfishness, make no mistake about it. We need to have a certain amount for self always. We need to put self first. But we also need to live in the reality that our brothers and sisters out here, they need a little bit of energy from us, right? So we stepping into those spaces in the proper mindset helps us to achieve better results.
Yep. And taking from there, I would say if you're starting a new conversation with somebody and it's something that might be either a delicate situation or something where it just culturally just had no idea that's how you lived your life. So what the way I like to look at that is you need to set parameters. What are the parameters of what it is that you're about to talk about, and what are your expectations? It's I want to bring this up. I want to talk about this because I want to understand a little bit better how your family interacts from the course of sitting for a meal, simple as that, or an education process, and say so when I'm bringing this up to you, I want to understand how you break out the books, how you go through things, and it may be different than what I have and the way I do it. And at the end of it, we may agree to disagree on it. It may be something where, hey, you've got your method, I've got my method, but it's kind of cool to understand how somebody does something differently. So you're not setting out to convince one another. You're not setting out to have some kind of an argument about something, but you're actually expecting to just learn something from each other and gain from the experience of another human being. And if we have the chance to do that, then we'll be able to move through that communication much more efficiently. So that's the preparation to agree to disagree. And then the other really important part of it is you have to bring yourself into a place of emotional tolerance. The emotional tolerance that has to be had is I have to understand that Ferdinand may feel very strongly about what it is that I want to talk about. We're going to go into an example. We did not prep for this, which was intentional, but we're gonna part of our conversation. We're gonna talk about food a little bit. And I know Ferdinand has very, very strong feelings about diet and the way that he eats. And I've had very in-depth discussions with him about how I eat, and it's a different way of doing things. He believes very firmly in what he says about the way he eats, and I'm okay. So he tends to be more, would you say, vegan or vegetarian? Tends to be. I'm saying so. That leaves it open. I understand.
So I've got to look at the definitions of each one of those words.
Okay.
So since
Well,
I'm not,
vegan would be no animal anything, no honey, no no animal products of any kind, whether it's in your mouth or on your back or on your feet. So no leather shoes, no leather coats, no fur, no,
right.
vegan would include those things that are the only reason I know this, by the way. I don't know if you're watching, Amanda. My daughter Amanda is vegan. And I said, as long as you're getting the right nutrition, and there are some challenging supplemental things that are very easy to get from meat. But if you don't eat meat, if you don't eat animal fat and animal meats, then you either have to, you have to consume it some way. You have to get it into your body. The body doesn't manufacture it. But there are supplements that can do that. You just have to know what they are and make sure you get them in your body so your body operates correctly. Where meat will give you that. But we're talking to go back to the question. The statement was, so veganism includes all of those things, where vegetarian, you can have a vegetarian will eat eggs or eat fish, where a vegan tends to not eat those things, even though philosophically, it's an okay thing. And sometimes they'll even make exceptions. Even a vegan will make exceptions. She's hasn't
Just so we
gone.
don't, so we don't
Go
get
ahead.
too far up in the weeds. I would say that it's probably neither one of those for me. Like I'm working towards, I say both of them, but occasionally I still eat fish,
Yeah,
and I haven't really put a whole lot of effort into taking a look at what all of my products and my clothes and all that is made of. So that's all work that I got to put in on the transition.
sure. And also, you have a reason for not, let's say, eating cow, and what would be the reason to not eat beef?
Well, the human body wasn't built to it wasn't created to eat meat, and there's multiple different signs within that gastrointestinal system as well as with the teeth to see that we weren't supposed to eat. I would say that we weren't supposed to eat meat at all, including fish, but we definitely weren't supposed to be eating those types of animals. The process, how long it takes to process that type of food going through the gastrointestinal system, in my opinion, is a clear sign.
So my view of that is actually 100% the opposite. My point of view, and we've had this conversation,
Right.
but so that's where you have to have you have to have some emotional temperance and say, this is the way Ferdinand believes, and I'm not going to sit here and try to convince him to go eat a cow. Because I know, first of all, I know it's not going to happen. Second of all, we're going to do is get into some kind of an argument about it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense when we're trying to move forward as people and make our relationship better. It doesn't make sense to get all excited about, well, it's the best nutrition that you can possibly put in your body, and start, your face changes and you get all emotional and stuff about it. There's no reason for that. But so having said that, to pull back, that would be one option to do, and what you have to make sure you're careful to stay away from, and instead say, now, as I studied science throughout the past, it became very clear to me, and there was people that actually verbally said it. So there was teaching to me that I built on that idea and that thought. So this is not my invention, but when I look at the human digestive system, it's short, and you cannot digest, you can't get all the nutrients very effectively from plants because the digestive system is too short, so it doesn't have to spend enough time in the gut. Where like a ruminating animal, like a cow, so a cow will go out and eat grass and corn, which is usually fed to them. That's not something that they go out and find, but they go out and they chew it, they swallow it, they regurgitate it, it's cud, they chew it again, it goes down in the second stomach, they regurgitate it, they chew it up again, it goes down. Well, through that process, they're able to extract all of the nutrients out of what it is that they're eating, and it goes into their muscle and fat. And then we as humans can take a really relatively small portion of that and get all of those nutrients out of a very small amount of eating this animal. And I mean, to me, that's the digestive system, but the beginning of the digestive system being in the mouth with saliva and teeth. The teeth are made. We don't have big, giant, flat molars that grind back and forth and get that. In order to, if you're gonna be a vegetarian, a lot of the best nutrition is going to come out of cooking. Yeah, cooking your food is important. I understand the raw movements. I understand it completely. Don't start making all kinds of comments. I mean, go ahead and make some comments, but there's going to be some opinions that go into that too. So you have to cook to get some of the nutrients out. Some of them, the nutrients are best out of the raw food. So you actually have to have both. And I understand that, but to get enough nutrients, you have to eat gigantic piles of salad where I can eat a piece of meat and get the same amounts of vitamins A, D, C,
Can I jump in?
and so on. Almost. So my point of view is based on, it's a science-based thing, but I do understand that there's more than one way there's more than one way to eat. There's more than one way to get your nutrition. And I'm always curious, how do you make sure that you're getting all of the right vitamins in a diet where I might not be able to find meat, let's say in a year and a half from now. Maybe tough to find anything. I may be relying strictly on what's on the ground. I want to know what comes up out of the ground and what I need to put into my body in order to make sure I'm getting the right nutrition. So, I mean, I'm motivated to learn what it is that Ferdinand knows, which is why we're talking about it in the first place.
Absolutely. So I do want to touch a couple things that you said. First things first, the thing about the plant kingdom is all of the nutrients, all of the minerals that the human body needs are available in plants, usually right in somebody's yard, and definitely within let's say a state forest that's close by them. Usually they're the plants that have all of the minerals that the human body needs are growing along roadsides, definitely growing along waterways, along bridge lines, so we have everything that we need growing. The salad, you were talking about how you got to eat a boatload of salad, and I understand what you're saying. You're right. In America, you do have to eat a whole lot of salad to be able to get the proper nutrients. However, that has a lot to do with the demineralization of the soil within multiple different countries, especially here. But that has a lot to do with a lot of people getting a one size fits all approach on their creation of their salad, whether they create it themselves or not. They're normally getting iceberg lettuce. They're normally getting maybe some spinach out of the bag or something like that. And if that's how they choose to do it, that's their business. However, these are going to be the lowest amount of nutrient content in food. So when we have that type of an issue, in my opinion, I think that people should study the plants in their environment. Study the nutritional content, the mineral content of those plants that are growing in their environment, because what you're going to get out of the grocery store is going to be a shell of itself, even if you're on the outer perimeter of the grocery store, right? But there are plants in our environment that give way more calcium than milk. There's plants in our environment that give way more protein than meat, right? But that is as a result of a person doing the proper studies.
Sure. Well, protein, balanced protein. We don't need nearly as much protein as what we're told. I mean, if you're a weightlifter, if you're trying to be a bodybuilder, that's a completely different environment. But we can do with a very, very relatively small amount of protein on a daily basis. The idea that, well, I'm going in the gym, I'm working out, so therefore I need 100 grams of protein a day. No, you don't. That's incredibly, incredibly grossly overstated. Um, here's some of the things. So vitamin B12. I can't share my screen, so I'm telling you what I just pulled up here, and this is I'm familiar with these things. So I'm reading the same thing that I've read and studied before. Vitamin B12. This nutrient is almost exclusively found in animal source foods like fish, meat, dairy products, and eggs. Vegans and vegetarians are at a higher risk of deficiency and must rely on supplements of fortified foods. So there as an example, I know that you have trust in Dr. What's her name?
Dr. Sabi.
Maybe it's Dr. Sabi. But you've said, well, I defer to, and that's what I count on. There's some of the things that are out here on the net where the body will actually manufacture what it needs on its own if it has the precursors to these things. So you said that's a very, very important distinction between the two, which is why there's the connection between these two. What's the difference between the two? You have meat eaters writing things down, which are true, but it's ignoring information that vegetarians or vegans are doing to make sure that they're getting those nutrients. So, you've got it's a complicated, very complicated thing. Nutrition is far more complicated than we've ever given it credit for.
And just so everybody out there who's listening in, just so y'all know what Tim is doing, we're still talking about navigating communication through cultural diversity. But what we're doing is we're giving you a demonstration right now of a challenging topic. Yeah. that is hard to have as a conversation through cultural lines, and we're demonstrating it being done in an effective and an efficient way right now.
Exactly. So as we work through these types of conversations, it's to use reference material and say, well, this is the reason that I believe in what I believe, and then and it's point counterpoint, and through it to the end of it, we can and we're often both doing the same thing. Well, all right, I just found this, and and we'll say, okay, so this is what it says, and then read back and say, and then we'll talk about that for 20 minutes and break that down, and by the end of it, we come up with a lot more information than what we would have had if we were just on our own, trying to come up with our own answers for, well, why is it that I eat this way, and you're not gonna figure that out as good as if like in this situation where I'm talking to somebody who has an opposite opinion, and a lot of that is cultural. I think is that a cultural thing for for melanated people to are more vegetarian or vegan? Is that I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, speaking for American melanated people, I would say that the majority are not vegetarian or vegan, and that's much more connected to Stockholm syndrome than anything else, in my opinion. When we look at what Western psychological conditioning has done through the political space, the academic space, the religious space, and all the other spaces, they've all pushed one message: eat beef, eat chicken, get eggs for breakfast, have some pig for breakfast, right? So, you hear those things enough, and then you taste it, somebody cooks it a certain kind of way, oh, you're hooked at that point, even though it's not your descent nature.
Yeah, interesting. So if that, I really hope that's was a good example for anybody that's watching, paying attention out there, whether you're watching it right now or this is if you're watching this as it's been recorded and available. But there's like nutrition. That's a very easy one compared to some of the others. When we get into definitely where there's cultural differences is when we start talking about religion.
Yes.
So religion is a much more difficult topic because people do tend to be emotional about it, because they go to church and they're told by the pastor up standing up there, pastor, preacher, priest, the shaman, they're being told by the leader up there, this is how you believe, this is how it is, and you need to go out there and bring people into our world. I mean, if that's your mission, I mean, that's great. What I would like to suggest is that you just let people be who they are and maybe learn a little bit about who they are. So, and this is, the huge communication thing is seek first to understand, then seek to be understood. So I may want to let Ferdinand know a little bit more of the inner workings of what my faith base is. But the first thing I'm going to do, if this is a topic I want to get on, I'm not looking at trying to convert Ferdinand. I'm not looking, hey, no, you need to come over into the Lutheran church and believe this way. For me to try to convince Ferdinand to live my way, well, that that it's not a healthy way to live. It's very self-centered, in a bad way, where you think that your way is the only way. I'm interested to know what Ferdinand's way is, because he's had this faith throughout his life, or certainly a big portion of it, and he views life through these glasses. And in order for me to understand how he looks at things, I need to look at his belief system in order to understand what his background is. So that's where I come in and seek first to understand. So I'm gonna ask questions. Tell me about Moors. Tell me what that lifestyle is. What the lifestyle is like on a daily basis. Is there, is Sunday set aside? Is it as a religious day? Or, I mean, well, biblically it's Saturday actually, but do you agree with that? I'm kind of wondering if Ferdinand, if you have that same, because we're told, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, but the Sabbath day, what I was taught when I was a child, and church is still on Sundays, but then when I dug into it a little further, I found that the Sabbath is actually Saturday. Have you ever heard that?
Well, yeah, the Sabbath is Saturday.
See, simple. Mm-hmm. But I was raised it was Sunday, so now if I didn't know why, I may want to ask Ferdinand and say, well, so why? I mean, what is it that makes Sunday? Is it just scripture that brings you to that point? Is it doctrine, or what? What is is there a faith basis for it, or is it just something that it's a lot easier for y'all to get together on Saturday? So I would ask the question.
That's the reason why I brought up that's the reason why I was talking about Western psychological conditioning, because the hard reality many Americans are going to have to face in the coming months is that they've been lied to in many different ways to keep control over them, to move through this system, work for 40 years, earn money, pay bills, give up their energy for peanuts. And how they did that was primarily through ideological principles and creating a fear-based society. Well, you gotta switch everything around for that. You got to turn everything upside down for that. You got to put people in a position where they're completely out of balance all the time, and now they're able to be controlled, right? So people were taught that the Sunday was the Sabbath. Well, who were they taught it by? Most people, from my understanding, were taught by Christian leaders, right? And the ultimate Christian leader who has a body of flesh, they call him the vicar of Christ on earth, the Pope. So he's the one or whoever the Pope is at each time, they make the rules when it comes down to Christianity, and this is one of those things that, you talk to the average Christian and they're going to be like, I don't know God makes those decisions. Yeah, God should be making those decisions, but those decisions are actually made by the Pope and the College of Cardinals. and this is for the entire Christian world, no matter what denomination of their Christian movement is. And we've got a whole lot of different ones, so it's not just the Sabbath, it's so many things, like for example, you go to Ephesians chapter 6. If you look in the Tinsdale version of the Bible, Tynsdale, for anybody who wants to look this up, the Tinsdale Bible, it says in Ephesians 6 that the helmet is for your health. Right? When we talk about the armor of God, it says the helmet's for your health in that book. But then you go to the King James Version and it says that the helmet is for your salvation. Right? So these different variations were put in place so that people could keep control over people, because anybody who's got whole health, it's very difficult to control them. You don't need help when you have whole health. Your whole being is operating the way it's supposed to. This thing right here is downloading and uploading as it's supposed to. At JUCO is taking place as it's supposed to. There's no running away from books when you're in your whole being. You're running towards books when you're in your whole being. So to keep people away from being whole, they had to keep them confused. If you want to keep them confused, you got to feed them poison. You got to teach them lies. You gotta give them clowns as political leaders, and you give them the clowns' cousins as the religious leaders.
And I think there's something to learn from every religion. You've studied a lot more than I have. I mean, for me, the studying that I've done has been all aligned with Lutheranism, and I can tell you a lot about Lutheranism. I grew up in it. I was kindergarten.
Tim, I don't know if you can hear me, man, but if you can hear me, you got like a snap, crackle, pop thing going on over here, like computer love kind of thing. It's almost like somebody else is watching a movie on your Wi-Fi.
It shouldn't be. Is that better?
Hopefully it's not me on this end. But no, you can keep going. I just wanted you to know that you sounded a little I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like through noise was happening.
That's interesting. There's no sound here. I'm plugged in instead of going with Wi-Fi. I don't know what could be wrong on this end. I see my microphone everything seems to be attached.
I think it might just be me. I'm looking at the feed on Facebook right now, and it looks like you're coming in clear. But sorry for interrupting you. I'm listening.
So just with on that particular topic. So the whole point being this. Now, I made a decision that a long time ago that there's no reason for me to have opposition to the way somebody believes, and I don't think anybody has to try to have opposition and tell me, well, that's you don't understand the triune God properly or whatever. This is the way I understand it because this is the way I was taught it, and I don't really see the value in turning it into some kind of an argument where you're fighting against each other, and so much so that people would come up to me and say, well, oh yeah, a lot of Muslims over there in Baghdad. And I said, yeah. It's like, well, were you afraid? I'm like, afraid of what? We got along great. We didn't have any problems. I wasn't trying to convert them. They weren't trying to convert me. They lived their lives. I lived my life. We had great interactions. Well, I said, why do you say that? And it was about militant Muslims, about people, they're people that have a different mindset, and it's they're as I understand it, they're the minority. And while I never came across any, fortunately, I guess, but that's not about necessarily their faith. They call it faith, but that's not the way it's written in the Quran, as I understand it. And the whole point is most people, they don't fit that kind of aggressive attitude. So if you take that out of your mind, take that out of your paradigm that you have, that well, they're different and they're Muslim and therefore they're going to be violent. It's like, no. You misunderstand. You're being taught wrong. And I'm talking about highly educated people were asking me this question. And I said, no, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it is in real life. Most of these people fit into the side of a peaceful nation. There are people like in the United States go back to, Malcolm X and so on, where, they're very rightly upset about being told and manipulated to do things one way when they should have been left to be able to hold their belief in their heart and their minds, and be able to hold their life and be able to act and live in peace. And that's really one of most of everything I've ever seen in religion that falls along these lines, that there's not a violent streak there. That's not a mainline thing. Am I right?
So some of it was kind of hard to hear, but I think that when we say when we look at these different groups of people around the world, I think it's important for us to align them with nations. So like when you say militant Muslims, um, would you say that these are militant Saudi Arabians, militant Moroccans? That's the kind of question that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I understand the distinction. I see why you're asking it. So now I haven't really met. I haven't met
we have a high concentration of Muslim population around the world.
Yes.
So there's Muslims in pretty much probably every country on the planet.
Well, I think I looked at it, and I'm pretty sure it's the biggest faith-based belief system there is. I think there's more Muslims than any other religion. I think Christianity is close. It ranked way up there, but I think there's more Muslims in the world than any other religion. Did you ever look that up?
And the reason why I'm kind of like sticking with militant Muslims is only because it's only a certain amount of what you said that I was able to understand because of the the weird thing that's happening on my end over here in the sound. Like I said, it's happening on my end because it's not a problem on the feed. I just heard you on the Facebook. But anyway, when I hear that, I think about I think about nation states that have done other nation states wrong, right? So what we've had going on for a really long time is, in my opinion, would be the equivalent of a religious war, right? There's been a religious war happening for a minimum of 2,000 to 3,000 years, probably longer than that, and it's still happening to this day, and it's almost like it's a war between Islam and Christianity. Well, you got a lot of people who've been getting screwed over by Christian nations, and then when they want to show how they feel, they want to have some revenge, they're painted to look a certain kind of way. Like I'll give you an example, right? Let's say some people in Libya, I believe that's the country that Muammar Gaddafi was the president of. Let's say that they wanted to attack America. Americans in the national narrative, in the propaganda machine, the television, the news, all that, they would call them angry Muslims. They would call them dangerous Muslims, terrorist Muslims. Yeah. And at the end of the day, what they would actually be is a group of people who are fighting for their rights. We had a foreign government come over here and kill the president and portion of his family. So we want to do something about that. So it's that conditioning that has taken place that has put us in a position to to kind of look at people a certain kind of way. I feel sorry for the newscasters because they're receiving whatever they're saying on the news from a writer. The writer is receiving their information from the news editor, the main guy overhead. The main guy overhead is getting his information from the station owner. The station owner is getting his information from probably one of Elon Musk's lieutenants. Elon Musk's lieutenant's getting it from Elon. Elon's getting it from probably one of the Rothschilds or one of the Warburgs or one of the Vanderbilts. And then the question is, who are they getting their orders from?
Mm. Well, there's a big question. And far beyond the place that we were trying to get to today. So really it falls right into the point. The point is that there's not as many militant religious people out there as you think. So when we talk about prejudice, to have a prejudice to say this is what their model of thinking is, and people think, well, they're violent people. No, it's not. That's what we're talking about. We're being taught. We're being taught to have this division.
What we're talking about, we're being taught.
Get feedback from you.
We're being taught to have this division. What we're talking about, we're being taught.
I'm getting feedback from you. I'm getting the speakers refeeding through your microphone.
Oh, sorry about that.
There was no way. I got totally lost. It was like I've got nowhere to go with this except just to wait it out. I don't know if you're maybe trying to.
I should have turned my microphone off. I wasn't even thinking about turning my microphone off, but I can hear you better on the Facebook.
Yeah. Okay. I get you. Yeah. So I guess, and I know I've said this before. Can't we all just get along? I mean, it seems like such a trite thing, but it's not. The truth is that the people that you're looking at across the way, hi, honey. The people that you're looking at across the way from you, they're just make assumptions that they're okay. And have a smile on your face, and understand that everybody bleeds red. We're all we're of the human race. That's what we are, the human race. Try to stop looking at people based on some, you've never seen them before because you live in Northern Illinois. That doesn't mean that they're not reasonable people. So don't walk around and have a funny, strange look on your face. You just look at people like they're people. Look in their eyes and see human to human. That's that human to human contact. Don't make assumptions that their religion is this or that or the other thing, because quite frankly, that doesn't make any difference. What they believe in their heart and their religion and who their God is makes absolutely no difference, has absolutely no impact on you or your life. That's really my point. Keep trying to make it, because I think that's a huge barrier for people. And communication wise, understand that people have that.
You making that point, and now I was able to hear a little better. I turned my microphone off, and then I went to the Facebook to hear, so I was able to get that. But yes, we all are one family. This is humanity, and what has happened throughout the years is divide and conquer. So everybody gets to be a crayon color, right? And crayon color, the white crayon colors stick together, the black crayon colors stick together, the purple crayon colors stick, all these colors are supposed to stick together. And then now that we've got that to work, let's go ahead and do divide and conquer again. So within each of the groups, now let's have religious sects. Now let's have education sects, right? So certain people, they're only going to hang together if they're doctors, or if they've got certain types of education in certain areas, right? So there's a lot of divide and conquer happening, but we need to get past that, and we need to get to a point where all of us are working together, all of us are communicating, right? We need to work through the challenges of the cultural diversities. And we need to have, like Tim was saying in the beginning, we got to have respect for each person's traditions, their cultures. And now if their traditions and cultures is leading down a space of disaster, we need to respectfully tell them. But at the same time, we need to also live in honor of the law of non-compulsion. And if that person wants to walk that path, we don't necessarily support it, but we also don't stand in the way.
Yep, absolutely. And it was for me, it was really important that we covered this today. And we had the, let's see, protection better. I don't know what that tagline is there. Is that a question?
Looks like we got Global South nations prove black males not fit for leadership. Unfortunately, many of the black males, or not black males, but many of the melanated males around the world are not fit for leadership. I'll be the first to say that. I do think that there's a turnaround coming. And I'm sorry for you being interrupted on what you had to say, but I think that we need to address what.
Absolutely. No, that when it came up, it looked important enough to pause for. So,
Yeah,
and I was really landing the plane for my side of it. I wanted to make sure that the communication thing was understood. That it's something that if you have questions on how to deal with that because you feel insecure, you can message us directly, or post on the Facebook on the podcast itself. I try to keep my eye on it. We haven't had a whole bunch of things come through there, but I do pay attention to that. Also, I expect that this is going to be something that we cover. It's going to be an ongoing topic, probably, that we come back and revisit. This is maybe a way to not express yourself because it's something that is often misunderstood. So to take those misunderstandings away, this needs to be flushed away and not utilized. Whatever that might be. I can't even come up with an example right now because I don't know. We just talk about everything, so it's really hard for me to imagine not being able to communicate about something in a certain way.
Well, since we have these comments, let's go ahead and let's talk about that. All right. So,
okay. Yep. Sounds good.
I appreciate Niggas Afro Dane Doll. Really appreciate you. Please understand that what we have going on in the world is spiritual warfare. Part of the reason why so many melanated males around the earth are not good leaders is because of the Western psychological conditioning. Please understand that, and this is not just America we're talking about. We're talking about many African nations. We're talking about pretty much all of Europe. We're talking about most, if not all, of Asia, as well as South America, as well as Australia. We're talking about the entire world, all of the civilized world's population. You've got a lot of melanated males all over the world on every continent. Why aren't they great leaders? Well, what is the problem there? They've been suppressed. They've been oppressed, right? Please understand that this has happened. This has taken place. This has been spiritual warfare waged on the people to make sure that you never have a black messiah raise up. And I am using that term black messiah specifically because it is written in the CIA document called COINTELPRO. They were searching for the black messiah. They wanted to make sure that melanated leadership never had another rise ever again, right? So when you do that, you do a spiritual / mental castration of so many of these men. You also create division within the home. Understand that many of the melanated men around the world, there may be a lot of Caucasian men who have this problem too, but many of the melanated men around the world are having trouble in their homes with their women. Well, why? Because the home has been infiltrated by the government, and the government has given a false sense of pride to these women to believe that the government can replace the man, right? So when you break up that home, you've taken away that man's most important leadership role. What happens to him as a result? How is his spirit damaged? How is his mind damaged? How does he damage his body as a result of him having to have the trickle-down effect of spirit, mind, and body? They will all always be in alignment on a vibration. So if these men are consistently in fear, guilt, doubt, and disbelief on a regular basis, because everything that they might think is kind of cool to do, it's been infiltrated in some kind of way. And unless you're spending a whole lot of money on something like, let's say, Super Bowl tickets, then you get to have fear thrown at you. You get to have guilt, doubt, disbelief, despair thrown at you all the time. This is spiritual warfare. Then we go outside and we look up in the sky and we see those lines. Well, that's spiritual warfare too. That's just on a physical level, right? That's the chemicals that now we got to breathe. Then we come in the house and we're like, man, like I don't really got too much time to grow no garden. I ain't really got too much time to fish and hunt. I got to pay these bills. So what am I doing? I'm going to the grocery store buying poison food. So I'm eating poison. Then on Sundays, I'm more than likely going to listen to poison from some pastor, reverend, clergy leader, sheik, doesn't matter what their title is. And they don't know what the hell they're talking about because they never walked the path of purity. I want to be very clear with everybody out there on how we get in a world where melanated leadership from men is at an all-time low. This is why, and I could break it down so much deeper, but I don't want to go off too far on the tangent. I want to give my brother Tim a chance to respond.
Yeah, Ferdinand, you do that a lot, man. Except when we're when it's just me and you, I can kind of pause and think about what you said, because whenever you talk, you say a lot of things. There's a lot of information that comes out of your brain and just flows out. So it's there's a lot of ground to cover that. I would have to say, now I don't know what the percentage is. I think that's probably one of the things I would look at if I was to analyze why are there not black leaders out there. I know that the capability is there because I've talked to, and I have enough friends that are melanated, and they make excellent leaders because they're in leadership roles. I think the suppression and breaking down of the families, that's got to be huge. I never even really thought about that. But take a man who, a man of pride and strength and value, and then take his family away from him, or make him want to walk away from his family. And now he's out, he's living on his own. And what's he doing? He's hanging out on street corners, hanging out at bars, goes to work, does his thing, maybe pays child support, maybe he doesn't. Well, what kind of a leader is he going to make? He's not going to make a good leader, but the capacity was there. It was available. If you could take a man like that, and now he's seen both sides of what that looks like, what it's like to be suppressed and oppressed, and put him out into an education situation where he's brought up and he's uplifted in his community, then he's gonna start to understand, wow, this makes a huge difference, living life this way or living life that way. And I'm gonna choose to live the righteous life, and I'm gonna turn this thing around. Start picking up the right books, getting the right education, getting involved in community and understanding how people are affected, and then actually start to do things. Be an activist. You got to start out, volunteer, hang out, serve food, whatever you can do to uplift your community, and then you'll find more and more places where you'll be able to share your message and share what you've done. But you gotta be involved in those positive situations, and you need to have a positive mentality. Well, the only way you're going to have that is to turn yourself around and put yourself in those situations where you're exposed to positive people, to positive environments. And I don't see why you couldn't take somebody who is suppressed and oppressed, who's gone through and had family and walked away from them. And I'm talking about a stereotypical thing, but I know, I've got Ferdinand here to back me up. If I get lost somewhere, he can stop me on this. But I know that's a situation that's been around and it's been going on, and it's a stereotypical thing.
Well, let me go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
When we look at what melanated males need to do, especially in America, the process you just called out, I think that's a great process. Make no mistake about it. I don't think that it works for melanated males, though.
Oh no.
This is the reason why. Spiritual warfare is being waged heavily on the melanated male and on the melanated female, heavier in America than anywhere else on the planet, right? So for melanated males, at the very least in America, to become fit for leadership, in my personal opinion, that requires a lack of participation in this system as we know it. They're going to have to step out of this system, and they're going to have to go ahead and get it from the dirt. They're going to have to step out to the country or wherever, grow your own food, fish and hunt if you got to have meat, build your own stuff, create your own industry, and detach from society. See, this society is not built for melanated males and melanated females to win. There's no winning in this society for melanated males and melanated females. The ones who have won, they're in the grave right now. The ones who look like they're winning, I would say 99% of them have paid a price so heavy to win that if we was to know about it, we would think that that person was insane. We hear about it and we hear about it on videos all the time on social media. There'll be a couple of them here or there, be like, yeah, man, you know, I had to give my son. I had to sacrifice my mother. I had to do this and I had to do that. Right. And then you look at the other ones who might not have had to sacrifice a son or a mother. And these guys, they might have graduated from college with like 2, 3, 4 degrees. And now they're making $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And what did they sacrifice? They sacrificed their ability to speak. They had to sign non-competes and non-disclosure agreements that was so detailed that they can never talk about anything, including them wiping their own ass on TV or on whatever, right? They could never be a speaker for their people. They can never be a leader for their people, right? So to become fit for leadership as a melanated male, specifically in America, more than likely in every single civilized nation on the earth, the melanated male and that melanated woman would need to completely detach from the system because it is not built for them to have sustainability, for them to thrive, for them to have everlasting life more abundantly, for them to realize their dreams.
Now, for me, my paradigm would say whatever the mind can see and believe it can achieve. You don't think that's a possibility where you could take somebody and pull them out? Sure, you got to pull them out of the circumstance, whatever they're in, that's causing this negative environment. But to pull them out and say, listen, we're gonna there's a new thing. I don't know what it would be. Would it be some kind of camp or something like that, where you'd say, this is a camp, this is a leadership camp. We're gonna cleanse you of all the crap that is in society right now that has got your mind wrong, and we're gonna bring your mind around into a new light, and you have the potential for leadership. So we want to see you get to leadership. And I mean, it'd be, some kind of indoctrination camp. I don't know what it looks like. Maybe it's even something that's out there, the idea of it, but to take people that have the capability and to take it up to the next level. I mean, it seems to me that it would be possible to pull people. Not everybody has potential. I mean, there's millions and millions of people that they're doing what they can do right now. And they're working a job and they're putting food on the table. They're, they put their knees under the table at the same time as a family. They're growing a good family. There's no even leadership potential in most people. So if you're talking about people with potential of leadership, that percentage is relatively small compared to the 380 million people that we have. The 100+ million adults that are in a situation where it's like, well, you could be chosen for leadership. Well, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they don't, and they won't be able to. They won't be able to get it, most of them. So the pool gets smaller and smaller, and it doesn't matter what color you are. So I guess maybe because a lot of my experience with people who have darker skin than me is military, and a whole lot of them were officers. They were in what I would call leadership positions. Now, when you say leadership, like to run the country, what are your odds of getting that? Well, first of all, let's say 1 out of 350 million people, 1 out of 350 million that you could ever achieve such a thing. It's actually much, way smaller than that in reality. But that is a very small leadership. What about the leadership that's needed in groups? Well, like in your own church, leaders in a environment like that. You're elected, you're chosen, you're elected, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. You're put on the board. Now you're on the church board. Well, this is a leadership position. And if you don't do some of those positions, if you don't do some of those basic positions and scoop soup into a bowl, on Christmas Eve or whatever, do some volunteer work and show some ability to be able to give, to be able to help, to be able to show people the way in a direction, whether it be in a church way or in a just hey, you're not going to school, you're out on the street, you have this problem, and try to help get somebody to school so that they can finish their high school education and then they can go on and possibly do something, be productive members of society. It takes a leader to be able to get that guy who wasn't able to do it. It takes a leader to teach people that this is what you have to do in the world today in order to go to the next level. It is a step-by-step process. Where are the leaders today? You got to start out. You got to start out in the small places. Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you are 40 years old and you've never volunteered anyway, and you want to all of a sudden you want to be mayor of a town, it's not going to happen, man. You got to start. I mean, we're taught to start young. You got to start as young as you can and stay in a situation like that. Keep yourself in a responsible way of life. Can you start at 40? Yes, you can start at 40. You're better off if you start at 30. Start at 30 and start giving your time and sharing your strengths and abilities. Give yourself away a little bit and say, I'm doing this. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm learning to be a leader. Well, how you learn to be a leader? You're scooping soup. Like, first step. Got to start somewhere. And they didn't. I tried to run for mayor, and I didn't get anywhere on that. So well, yeah, you never did anything else. Of course, you didn't get anywhere. You got to get on committees, church committees, school boards, different things like that. Volunteering leads to the point where you're on the committees and those things where you actually can contribute a verse and you can bring yourself into a situation where you're actually influencing the people in your community. But you gotta start at the basics. It's like today. I don't understand. People come in, have electrical business. People come in and it's like, I want to be an electrician. Like, okay, well, let's take a look at this tape measure. All right, here's the tape measure. Okay, show me 3/4 of an inch. And they can't pick out the right line on the tape. Are they going to make a good electrician? No, they don't know anything about anything. Eventually they'll get there, but they have to be taught how to learn the tape measure first. And then, we'll get to the pipe bender 2 or 3 weeks from now, but in the meantime, you got to learn the basics first and do the basics first.
Let me jump in here just for a second, because I really appreciate this topic. And I appreciate the YouTuber who came in with the comments, because obviously the YouTuber is talking about what's going on in South Africa. Completely understand, right? But we're in America, so I want to touch on leadership in America, utilizing this book that I'm about to put on the screen for everyone to see. All right, so this book right here is called An Original History of Ancient America, founded upon the ruins of antiquity, the identity of the Aborigines with the people of Tyrus and Israel, and the introduction of Christianity by the Apostle Paul, written by George Jones. And then it says his letters behind his name is RSI MFS V, it looks like, and C. And then the copyright of this book is 1843 down here at the bottom. All right, so what I want to read to everybody is on page 4 and page 5. I'm only going to read a small portion so Tim and I can touch this, and so that our YouTube friend out there is able to see what the ancient ancestors were in leadership. Okay, this is very important for us to know this, because see, it may look like melanated males. It may look like melanated males, they're just not fit for leadership, and there are a lot who aren't. However, at one time, every single one of the melanated males on planet Earth was fit for the highest leaderships positions. So I'm going to start right here in the middle of page 4, and I quote, The fundamental error with all writers upon the Aborigines of America is that they have viewed them as one people. Authors have, therefore, been confounded by the different customs and ceremonies of religion as practiced in the two great divisions of the continent. They have seen that the natives were, to a certain extent, in one part of the vast domain, idolaters, and not in the other. That the North was essentially Republican in every aspect of its political existence, while that of Mexican America was as essentially composed of kingdoms and empires and governed by despotic monarchs, and that republics were interwoven with them, that each man in the North was a warrior and an equal, acknowledging no superior but their leader in time of battle. And should he fall in action, there was not a member of the tribe in which they politically lived, but could have taken his place and filled it with similar courage and ability. In Mexican America, they were not equal, but from the emperor, they descended by degrees to the serf and slave. In that country, stone and stucco temples were, stone and stucco temples and palaces were, and still continue to be found, erected with costly magnificence, and in which were jeweled idols, to which they bent the knee. Their rich dwellings were splendid mansions, adorned with sculptured and beaten gold, and graced with the works of art, and as a people, enjoying all the refined elegancies of life. But in the North, their temple was the azure canopy of Jehovah, adorned with its myriads of golden stars. And when beneath that sublime dome they bent the knee, it was to the Almighty God alone. Their palaces were the gorgeous vistas of the forest. The columns were the gigantic trees, each year increasing in their stateliness. Their shadowy and painted roofs were the far-spreading branches and nature's tinted foliage. Their mansions were those of independent wanderers, even the simple tents of Israel. And as for jeweled idols and figures of beaten gold, they presented the diamonds of the human eye, radiant with intellectual beams, and glancing from the living emblem of the first and priceless image, placed in Eden's garden by the architect of the universe. There are many different references that I can use, but I'm utilizing this specific reference to help everyone out there know that melanated males as a whole on the entire planet, but especially right here in what we call the United States of America and Canada, were the highest levels of leaders. Every single one of them was fit for the highest level leadership positions. And that was as a result of living off of the land, being cosmically connected, having a strong family structure, which is the beginning of nation building. Mother, father, child.
Mm-hmm. So the path was there. The path to leadership was there, historically speaking.
It still is.
There's no reason that it wouldn't be there today.
No, the path is there. It's not even a was. The path always is there. It never won't be there. It always will be there. However, it depends on how we utilize the law of suggestion. What we experience in repetition, we become. So if we choose to step into a realm of life that we don't really understand, but it's kind of attractive. We like the food. The females are kind of sexy, or whatever it is that pulls us in to that reality that we don't understand very well. We don't understand what governs that reality and what price that we have to pay for it. So this is the fall of the melanated people as a whole, by stepping into a European reality that they didn't understand and still don't to this day. Because if you talk to the average person who's melanated in America and you say, hey, let's talk about the Council of Nicaea. Let's talk about Josephus. Let's have a conversation about these crusades. I heard you was calling yourself a crusader for Christ. Let's talk about these crusades. Who was the people with the swords and who was the people that got killed in these crusades? They can't tell you any of this because they don't understand what they're practicing. They don't understand what they're giving reverence and worship to. They don't understand that they're living just like this author who published this book in 1843. He talked about the idolatry that was going on in Mexican America, which when he says Mexican America, he's talking about modern day Mexico throughout all of Central America and a portion of South America, if not all the way down to the southern tip of South America. He's talking about all of that. And he's talking about how they got stone and stucco temples. They got idols and all of this, right? Well, when we step into another way of life that we don't understand and we're just easily accepted into it, well, what happens is when we're praying to idols. And it's very clear that the melanated people who have been turned into European, modern day Europeans and don't even realize it, the vast majority of them, we're talking about like 99% of them, are praying to idols on a daily basis. And they don't know it's an idol because they think an idol is something that they built out of gold. They don't realize that a picture on the wall of Jesus is an idol if they're worshiping it. And they're doing it every single day, especially on Sundays, Wednesdays, possibly Fridays at church.
Monday, Thursday.
There you go. It's idolatry, and they don't even know it. If I set a preacher down and I explain this to him, I guarantee you the majority of preachers will be like, nah, you ain't right. And then I would take them to multiple different Bible verses that describes exactly what an idol is, exactly what idolatry is. And then I walk in their church and point it out to them, all the things that they're in violation of. But what they don't understand is that they're taking a group of people who could be likened to sheep. And this person who's in front of the microphone will be the shepherd, right? Well, you got to know that book back and forth. You got to know you back and forth if you're going to teach that. So when you teach these different things, not understanding it properly, a bunch of people are going to come to the table with a connotative understanding of what has been read, and they didn't even read it. It was what was read by somebody who probably just got out of prison for robbing a liquor store or something, and then they decided, all right, I found God while I was in prison. Now I'm coming out to lead the people. No, you need to come out and lead yourself first. And then if somebody who's led themselves first already says, hey, you know what, you got it, you did it, you have achieved what's needed to teach. Well, in that space, yeah, you got tapped on the shoulder by someone who could be considered faithful. The majority of these mofos ain't getting tapped on the shoulder by nobody except for Uncle Money. Uncle Money said, hey, it's time to be a pastor. We need some Gucci belts. We need some Balenciaga. We need some Mercedes. We need some Roof Chris. We need all of that. And our people is going to make sure that we get it. Well, what was the price for the people? Because it wasn't tithes and offering. It's death. And they don't even know it.
Yep.
Same thing it is for the Aztecs. The price for idolatry is death. Now, that's a whole nother topic. What I'm talking about primarily is leadership. The leadership pathway is there as long as we honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth, that on the earth land that the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. That is the great covenant. Now that covenant is said that way in the Moorish Science Temple. We can go to the Bible. That great covenant is in there. It's said a little different, but it means the exact same thing. Well, who are these fathers and mothers? Who are these foremothers and forefathers that we're supposed to be honoring? Well, it's the ancient foremothers and forefathers. We're supposed to be living the way that they lived. They lived right off the land. We just heard it from a European author who was highly respected of his time, because that book is dedicated to the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that book is dedicated to the King of Prussia. Somebody with a lot of money commissioned this man to write that book. And he clearly was one of the best of his time if they paid him that kind of money, because there wasn't that many people who could do that kind of work back then. Well, he just told us exactly what we've already seen from so many other books. We know that the Aztecs and the Incas and so many other groups of our people from back in those times, they had those temples, they had those palaces, they had those idols. We know that. But what we don't know is about the people of the North. We don't know anything. Most people don't know anything about them prior to 1492. That's all they know is from 1492 on. And they don't realize that prior to colonization, these are the greatest leaders on the freaking planet. And the bulk of them today, they call themselves African American. The bulk of them today call themselves Niggas, and they don't know who they are. They think that they are Africans. They think that they came from modern day continent of Africa. They think they might be Ghanaian. They think they might be from Belize. They think they might be from the Congo. They think they might be from this place and that place. And the reality of it, for the majority of the people,
I was going to say,
him and me in today's world, in the United States of America, they are the descendants of the people I just read on that book, talking about the greatest leaders that ever walked this earth, and they don't even know it.
So when I said was, did not preclude and not include is, but so the pathway for leadership was always there, and there's no reason that it wouldn't still be there today, and it is. So it's just a matter of getting on that path.
That's what. So to get on that path, it requires detaching. See, that path, for at least for melanated males, that's a spiritual path. We're talking about spiritual descent nature. So how do you get on the spiritual path? You detach from the physical. It doesn't mean you detach from the earth. It means you detach from the physical that's non-serving. Well, what's non-serving? That toilet, that shower, that stove, that oven, that refrigerator, all of these rectangles and squares that I'm looking at. These are not serving, right? So to walk the path of leadership is to detach and to allow spirit to do the walking. Walk by spirit, not by sight. Some will say walk by faith, not by sight. And I understand that that's the scripture, but I'm telling you to walk by spirit and not by sight. And how that works is a person taking their higher self and their lower self, or their spirit, mind, and their body, and you sync them. You bring them into equilibrium. You bring them into balance. And in that space of bringing them into balance, your leadership unfolds. It just comes out of you like you packing on deodorant trying to keep the sweat out, but you just can't keep the sweat out, right? It comes out like that. It comes out innately, because now you are walking the path of knowing thyself. You're not just trying to know thyself. You are walking as yourself in full authenticity. And Juco is going to come out of you easily. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Let's assume that that this man, we're talking about this man, he's made a decision that he wants to take on leadership. He wants to find that kind of role, that kind of life. But he still has to pay his bills. He still has to, he still has maybe too much, and those are some changes that could be made too. But to take away, and this to me, I would say would probably be much more significant on a broader scale for people to find themselves is to, I mean, we're walking around with these things it's on everybody's hip right now. We're walking around, we've got everything's connected, and it seems like, at least back a while ago, 10 years ago, this is great. 20 years ago, this is great. I mean, you've got all the information that you need. It's right here. It's right on the computer. 10 years ago, it was in everybody's hands, connected to the internet, connected to social media, and connected to wasteful lifestyle, even, outside walking the streets, being in that environment and having to put on a show and to wear certain clothing and wear certain shoes and, to talk a certain way. I think within the framework of keeping the job and keeping things moving forward that way, maybe, you know, being there, supporting your family. But to make a change mentally, you gotta divorce yourself from the TV, from the social media, from that, you know, from the constant consumption of the crap that is being thrown in our face every single day. And it's become so pervasive that we don't even take a minute to get away from it. You know, by the way, like, subscribe, and so I mean, we're playing, you know, we're in the same world. But in that world, we're looking at a righteousness thing where we're trying to pull up mankind, and womankind, you know, if we're as long as we're going to use words like that. But the people that are out there that can start to make those changes. I appreciate going out in the woods, not living with a toilet, you know, living off the land. You know, you fish, you pull stuff off of the forest floor. You know, living that way. I've lived that way. I mean, it was, you know, individual trips. It was not like it was a long lifestyle, you know, in 10 days at a time. So, I mean, at least understand what that means, but it's not realistic for somebody to be able to pay their bills, but they can divorce themselves from these poisons that are out there. You know, if you find yourself spending all your time on social media, scrolling through reels, and, you know, reading and posting a bunch of crap on people's political posts, they're bitching about the election. Election's over, man. In 4 years, this guy's going to do his thing. So there's no reason to sit here and bitch about it all day, every day. You know, it doesn't make any sense to digest that, to shove it into your body on a constant basis. That'd be the first thing I'd say to divorce yourself from that. And anything that's negative on TV, anything that takes your attention away from your kids and your family, you know, bring it into focus. Start reading books instead. Start looking for things. Okay, well, what can I do to read that's righteous? You know, Ferdinand, man, he's got a whole raft of books that are all about positive learning history, historically who we were, historically who the melanated man was, and start to focus on who that was. Who was that person then? I can be that person today. And learn what it takes to make those changes. Learn to before you go giving up the toilet and stuff, you know, which I appreciate you saying. Appreciate you saying living on a very limited basis to really appreciate and to get inside your head, and man, there's nothing better than that. Nothing better than getting away from every single creature comfort that we have. But you can start with the little things. And get through those things first. Divorce yourself from the telephone. How many telephone calls do you need to have in a day? Well, if you're a business guy, you probably got to pick up the phone a lot, you know. And if you're expected to pick up the phone, those are the times you have to pick up the phone. How many times do you pick up the phone and it's nothing but BS? You know, take some time to walk away from it. Lock it up. I've got a box out front. Lock it up in the box. Put it away. You walk into somebody's house and you're gonna commune with them. And you know, if you know what that means, you know what it means. All we're really talking about is getting together and trying to think of ways that we can improve ourselves as human beings, right? But if you're gonna take some time to commune, lock the phone away in a box. It gets set in the box. It's put in the box. And while we're here, the only people that you need to talk to are here already. And focus, bring it back into focus. Keep yourself from getting pulled away from every single good social interaction that you have, whether it be with your friends, with your kids, with your mom, your dad, you know, the people that matter the most in your life. Connect with those people on an always basis. Speaking of which, so I'm coming up to, I've got payroll responsibilities I've got to take care of. But if you can unplug yourself from those pieces and just say, I'm taking the next, do an hour at a time, do 2 hours at a time. And when I was a kid, you know, I mean, we talked on the phone, you know, but the phone was attached to the wall with a cord. So we talked on the phone, and it was all about, where are you going to meet? We're going to meet in, you know. And we're gonna meet meet over by the fort, and you'd run through the field, you'd run down the path, through all the weeds and stuff, and you go out and you explore nature. And we would disappear in summertime. We would disappear in the morning. And this is even, as we're a little bit older, kids that have phones today, we were gone all day. We didn't talk to anybody. Didn't talk to my parents. It was gone for 10 hours, expected to be home for dinner. When those streetlights come on, you better be home within 2 minutes, and we knew when we paid attention to the light, and we used up every single minute of that. Why isn't any of that happening now? There's a lot of health in that. There's a lot of health and growth that goes into that. It's the same thing as an adult. You can put the phone down. You don't forget about binge watching your next Netflix show. Sure, there's a place for those things, but if you're looking at making a positive change in your life, you can't do it while you're sucked into this artificial world. You've got to be connected into the real world in order to be a real person and make real contributions into your community, the humanity that's around us, connection into people that look like you, connection into people that don't look like you, and be something to step up and do the best thing that you can. It's going to make you feel better as a human being, and could possibly bring you into those leadership roles. Given some time, free your mind of this constant being plugged in. With that, I'd like to say I'm going to have to shut down here. Really appreciate my time with you, Ferdinand. And sharing my ability to share Ferdinand with you means a lot to me, because this guy's got so much to contribute, and I just want to make sure that I put him out there as much as possible, even though he's on more podcasts than I can even count on two hands. But as long as I can be there and bring, I hope my people have had a chance to listen, or get on and watch the recorded version. This was excellent. It was super basic when it comes to communication. I understand that it was really basic, but it's just a matter of planting the seeds and getting things into our heads. And Ferdinand has the ability to connect all these individual pieces of educational materials and philosophies and across lifetimes. And just every time you can tune in and get a little bit of his knowledge is an advantage into your life, whoever you are. Ferdinand.
Let me turn my microphone on. Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate all of the kind words, and I reciprocate them in full. So I send love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice to your family. I send maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice to your family. I send empathy and compassion to your family, and I send those same principles and virtues out to all of humanity. Right? This is how we come together in unity, by operating within these principles, morals, ethics, and universal laws. Right. So today on the Black and White Podcast, we're in episode 6. We've been talking about navigating communication through cultural diversity. All right. We're going to go ahead and shut it down. Y'all be blessed and expose your gift.